本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。What's good, Internet? It's Friday, June 5th, and you're listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 318. I'm your host, Austin Walker, and I'm joined today by Ricardo Contreras.
Yo.
And Rob Zachney.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. It is, again, it has continued to be a long week this week. Every week, every week, every day, every week, every year has been difficult. But this week continues to be difficult in pretty unique ways. So thank you to everyone who sent us support. Thank you to everyone who has reached out to us. Solidarity with people who are protesting across the country and the world. It means a lot to me to see. If I'm being extremely frank, it means a lot for me to see the difference from folks between now and 2014, 2013, from the origins of Black Lives Matter, going back throughout my whole life, going back to previous marches against racism and protests against, bad policing, brutal policing, police violence. There has been a change. I don't want to say a sea change, because sea changes happen when real changes happen, when material changes happen. But it feels as if specific people I've seen have changed their tunes over the last 5 years. The situation seems like it has a lot more. There are a lot of people taking positions that are riskier positions, that put themselves out there a little bit more, that are fighting for things like police abolition, are fighting for racial justice in a way that doesn't feel like they're necessarily looking for the first door back to normalcy. And that is a relief to me in a serious way. So thank you to everyone out there who is, obviously thank you to everyone there who's been in the trenches for a minute now. Thank you to everyone who has skin in the game, obviously. But also thank you to those who have listened, who have shut up and listened for the last, decade. And who now understand that this is a huge thing, and who have seen in a very real way the truth about the ways in which police in America wield their monopoly on violence unjustly. That's kind of where I'm at with this. I don't know if either of you want to do a check-in. How are y'all doing? How are y'all feeling this week? This is less fun than our 10-minute politics check-in. Yeah. I'll be honest.
Jesus.
Well, in a weird way, I mean, in some ways, it is tough to resist the urge of going in the direction of the politics check-in, because you're also seeing some classic bad takes, right? You're seeing a lot of really familiar, disingenuous, whataboutist arguments, and one of the things that is heartening to me, at least, is the degree to which those narratives seem to not be getting traction as much. It helps that, in part, you have so many reporters who've been at these protests who are able to say firsthand. It's annoying that it takes that firsthand experience rather than interviewing protesters who are also good witnesses for these things. But it's very different now that you see a lot of reporters who are attending these protests, either as people covering them or are just in the crowd as part of the demonstration, who are seeing what protesters have long alleged, right? Police responding to alleged provocations that nobody saw, or provocations that are laughably minor. There is a Twitter thread going around today discussing a police crackdown that I think took place in Brooklyn last night, where they effectively kettled a group of demonstrators past curfew. And kettling is an old crowd control tactic that is clearly not about crowd control. It is about getting license to use violence against protesters. Kettling is, I first became familiar with the term, I think, during some, might have been G8 protests in London. But the police basically box protesters in and refuse to let them outside the cordons. The crowd can't disperse. The crowd is eventually in violation of whatever curfew or assembly ban the city has passed, and then the police have license to move in on these folks. And there's a thread going around today that a New York Times reporter was at one of these demonstrations, and that's exactly what the police did. And after curfew, they waded in and started assaulting protesters with nightsticks. And interestingly enough, the story the Times ran, at least the headline, is that after curfew, police started making arrests. I think it's frustrating to see the degree to which headline coverage and lead paragraph reportage does not reflect the observed reality of even reporters who are there. We are still seeing coverage kind of parceled out in these really measured ways that always presuppose the validity of the official narrative. And that is just observably not the world we live in right now. And in fact, has never been the world we live in. It's just now it's more obvious than ever.
Speaking of the New York Times, I think it would be foolish of us not to use our own editorial cudgel to briefly critique them for letting Tom Cotton have the credibility of their pages, of their opinion pages, from which he could spout fascist misinformation and a call to military violence in such a way that is it's so far beyond the pale, even for a newspaper that has steadily lost my support over the last few years, more than the last few years, really, if I'm adding up right. It is. I mean, what I said on Twitter is like there's dog whistling, and then there's this. For people who don't know, like Tom Cotton is very much positioning himself as the de facto heir to Trumpism. He's one of a few younger GOP politicians who is very effective at moving into whatever the next stage of Trump's early crypto fascism is, which is fascism. The next stage of it is fascism, of kind of eloquently for his base, communicating a entire sort of program of what must be done and where and who the elite are, the quote unquote elite are. He is someone who is already someone who should be on your watch list, right? Be on your like, oh, this motherfucker is going to run in 4 more years. This is a guy who's positioning himself to be the next Trump in a real way, and to cede your pages to someone like that, specifically, like not even to do the dressed up version of some sort. Like this is not like the centrist argument against protests. This is not the centrist argument for bringing the military in, because such a thing, frankly, is too absurd to even exist for most neoliberal opinion columnists. This is like all the way to the edge in such a way that is hard to misrecognize as anything but what it is. And so the decision that the New York Times made to run that column or that opinion piece from Tom Cotton to me is just like an absolute abdication of their duty as responsible publication, as responsible editors. One of the points that was going around today is you need to understand that when someone has this, you're not just giving them a platform, you're giving them material resources, you're giving them editors, you're giving them copy editors. In some cases, you're giving them fact checkers, though, as we know, the New York Times editorial pages, they don't always get fact checked. But what you're doing when you're doing that is you're taking those resources away from other writers and other arguments, and you're literally doing your best to help someone hammer into place the best version of their argument, the version without typos, the version where unfinished argumentative lines are instead finished and closed off. And when you give those resources to someone, you're doing the work for them. You're peddling their argument for them. And so, badly done, New York Times.
Well, and it's worth two things worth citing in particular about this. One is that there's been an increasing rift, I would say, or at least discontinuity between what is happening on the New York Times opinion pages versus what is happening across the rest of that paper. And it definitely seems that the opinion page has always had a conservative slant to it, where the most liberal voices are left of center, right? Mm-hmm. And then there really is no extreme, to which, obviously, as the Tom Cotton op-ed illustrates, there really is no extreme that falls outside the spectrum of opinion to the right that the opinion pages want to represent. However, inflammatory or however shoddily put together, they will run it.
Mhm.
They will not run police abolition pieces in general. They will not interrogate the arguments that have existed for a long time on the left. I was heartened to see that a lot of New York Times reporters were posting in solidarity that that running pieces like that was putting Black reporters' lives at risk. Because I do think it is hitting a point now where the New York Times opinion page is probably one of its most influential and popular products, even if the work there does not merit the outsized influence it has in discourse. Nevertheless, that is the world we've lived in for a long time, right? Like, there's a reason we all somehow know who Thomas Friedman is and what he thinks, despite being one of the least impressive thinkers of the latter half of the 20th century. And we're sort of at a point now where the reporters who are doing good work and increasing the diversity of voices that are heard from across the rest of that paper are at odds with what is happening on the opinion page. And I'm not sure if long-term that is a sustainable status quo for the New York Times. And I do feel like it needs to be resolved, probably with a considerable reimagining of what the New York Times opinion pages look like.
Absolutely. Cado, I'm sorry. I also do want to know how your week has been and how you're feeling about everything. And we kind of went off on a tangent there. Apologies.
No, that's fine. No, I was just listening. It sucks. It's the fucking worst out there, and it can feel really difficult in this time to be like, I wanted to be out there day one, and I didn't feel safe because of there's still a fucking pandemic happening. I waited to get the correct amount of I got a gas mask with the right filters so that I feel like I could be amongst a crowd, and like I was out there last night, and it still felt like I wasn't doing enough because it's hard to see these protests and the way that they're being like kind of struck down once it reaches past curfew as enough, when it historically hasn't, right? Like, it's still like shit is still bad. That's why this is happening again. And I really hope that we can, like, as the specific officers are being arrested, to let that not be the end goal for this moment, like we're talking about, abolition is probably is not even the ultimate goal of any of these protests, but like should be the next step.
It's on the table now, yeah,
right. I hope that we, as cops are being arrested, that people who are who are not white people, non-black people, don't say like, okay, we did it. Right. I hope they keep that energy, because I know the black and brown people, like the black indigenous people of color, will continue to keep that energy. Hopefully, most of us. But I'm really worried about losing that sort of allyship once they think the job is done. It's not done. Like, this is systemic.
Definitely.
This is not going to go away just because you arrest these specific officers. This is about that system of policing not being just in any way.
There's a tension I often feel in protests like this, where on the one hand, it is important to maintain the specificity. Like, remember who the people are who brought everyone out into the streets, right? Remember what happened to George Floyd. Remember what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. Remember what happened to Breonna Taylor. But two things. One, they all died from different forms of systemic violence and indifference to Black lives, right? And so justice for any of those individual cases does not bring the kind of change needed to prevent the next round of atrocities. And then on top of that, whatever demands might have existed at the start of these protests, police response has pretty much made clear that those are insufficient. right? Like
Yeah.
nothing, like people came out demanding justice and response from the police and from the people charged with overseeing the police and the administration of criminal justice. After a week of this, it's very clear that those people also have to go. And we are no longer in a case of we just need justice for these specific cases. At this point, there's a whole new raft of abuses we've seen perpetrated that also cry out for justice.
Totally.
Just
I for what it's worth, I also to your point, Cado, the energy that I hope we also keep is not just we should do more than arrest these particular cops and non-cop civilians who are also part of some of the most recent killings, but also that what reform looks like. Unsurprising, Austin Walker is not going to be the force of or the voice of incrementalism or light reform, right? Like,
yeah.
I understand what the appeal is of some of the stuff from the Campaign Zero folks. The what is the hashtag?
Eight can't wait. I hate
can't wait. Yeah. Well, I guess like I was struggling to put this into words on Twitter today. The problem isn't that the cops don't know not to choke people to death. The problem is that they kind of decide asymmetrically when to know and not know that, when they are afraid enough to let that be an acceptable way of responding to a situation. There isn't, for me, we cannot stop at we've told them to yell, put up your hands before they shoot you. We can't stop at certain types of chokeholds are illegal, or there needs to be more paperwork. All of those things would stop certain instances. I'm not saying that those wouldn't be improvements on a net, right? What I am saying is that what we've seen from the last century of policing, the last 400 years of policing in America, is that they will find a way to apply justice asymmetrically. That black and brown bodies will be bodies, not people, right? Like we will be persecuted. We will be subject to violence in a way that white folks are just not. And for me, the way that you address that is through much larger scale change to the way what policing looks like in this country. I don't, I am both a utopian and a realist in the sense that I don't think that by this time next year, the police will be abolished in every major city across this country. What I do hope is that we find places to work towards police abolition and a move towards other types of conflict resolution. This is not new stuff. It's important to understand that, I am a Marxist. I'm a communist. I am not an anarchist, right? But anarchist and anarchist thinking is an important part of leftist thought. I've done my best job to study anarchist thinking, and it's been around for 150 plus years. This is not new stuff. The idea of what would we do without the police is not a question we came up with this year. There are reams and reams and reams of paper about this issue and this question, and there are lots of contemporary movements right now that if you just search for police abolition and start doing some reading, especially right now as people are trying to get more resources out there into what that looks like. What's it look like to have a number you can call for mediation and intervention that doesn't start with and the person shows up with a gun, and a person shows up who's been trained that gun can be the way you de-escalate a situation. Yeah. And for me, it's not enough to train those people to de-escalate elsewise and also let them continue to have guns and the legal ability to use that gun and the protection of the courts in most situations when they use that gun. We have to think about more radical change. We have to think about a more radical reimagining of the ways in which we address not only the moment-to-moment crisis in which a cop comes into the picture, but the causes of the symptomatic situation that requires people, that leads people, not requires them, but leads people to call the police in the first place, right? There's the reason that people rob is not because, for the most part, is not because people are like, I love to fucking rob. It turns out, systemic reasons why people think this is what I need to do to get through this week. This is what I need to do to make money. There are other ways to address those situations, right? And we've seen certain cities across the country attempt this in different ways. Camden, New Jersey has leaned in that direction. They fired all their police in, I want to say, 2012, and rebuilt a police department that was much more built around community policing. I don't think it goes far enough, but you can look at the numbers there, and you can look at the accounts there from people who live there, who say, first and foremost, my relationship with my neighborhood, with my community is different now. And that is stuff that we have to think about a more general transformation, and not just this kind of like pick out the bad ones as they show up, because we know there's a system that produces these effects, and to not attend to that system is negligent, is civil negligence. And so thank you again if you're out there protesting this week. Thank you out there if you are too tired to protest but you're donating money, but you've been out there once or twice, you can't get back out there. Do what you can. And support those who are doing, because that support goes a long way. So yeah. Any final thoughts here?
No. Just tired.
Yeah, just tired. Well, Rob, we do have an embargo to attend to.
That is true.
And as journalists, our number one thing is PR embargoes.
Love them. The business of games goes on. So, yeah, this is the odd season, not just because of events in the world, but obviously I think there's a lot of things that you would have been seeing as E3 demos that are now being done as remote video conferences and demo sessions. And I recently had one for Total War Saga, Troy, which, it's Total War, but the Trojan War. But it's also, what if Total War were about that Brad Pitt movie? What if it were about...
What's the name of that movie?
Yeah.
Troy? Okay.
Yeah. Because their approach is literally... like almost verbatim, I think the tagline for that movie, like the truth behind the myth, or something like that, where, obviously Homer and the Greek playwrights were drawing from this tradition of legend and myth, and the Trojan War was a place where the gods walked among humans. But what if we took all of that and we took all the magical and deity mythological powers out of it and looked for what are things that could plausibly have been the root thing behind those poetic metaphors? I am a little bit skeptical of this direction, particularly after Total War 3 Kingdoms basically goes all the other way, which is, these guys are basically magic. Lu Bu killed 1,000 dudes in a big old brawl. He's just that badass.
I saw him.
That guy pulled his eye out and whooped somebody's ass with it. It was incredible.
Shout out to Xiao Dun.
But this is like, okay, so what was the Minotaur? Probably a big dude who may have worn a bull's head helmet. And that's how, that character would have existed in this time. What is Achilles? Obviously not a guy who was blessed by the gods to be invulnerable to any sort of harm, but he's just a badass.
They should have brought Lu Bu back. There should have been like an NWO style reveal where you see the Achilles helm from the back, and then it turns, and then like it sprouts the cool like long antennae that are on the Lu Bu helm, and it's like, oh shit, that's just Lu Bu. Lu Bu went to ancient Greece.
That's Lu Bu's.
That's Lu Bu's music. By God.
I only got to play a demo battle. Which is never really what you want to see in a Total War game. Like always, the real question is how is the campaign going to work?
Yeah.
But the battle was interesting enough because one of the things they've done here is that this is a Bronze Age conflict. So first off, they're saying that a lot of the stuff you're familiar with from other Total War games probably doesn't exist in this period, right? Like you're not going to have giant trebuchets. That stuff hasn't been engineered. You're not going to have giant like war horses with heavily armored mounted troops. The armor was too heavy, and they were about 1,000 years short of having bred the types of horses that can bear like fully armored guys.
Right.
So it ends up being a little bit more like what you might think of when you think of like Homeric myth, right? Like a lot of the games being fought by different flavors of dudes with spears, dudes with javelins, dudes with rocks, right? That is kind of what you're dealing with here. Mounted troops tend to be, skirmishers at the heaviest, or you've got chariots, which is how you deployed horses as a weapons platform in this period. The thing I find a little bit like, on the one hand, I was like, oh, that's bold, right? You're really getting away from a lot of the Total War rock, paper, scissors balancing of, like cavalry just demolishes ranged units demolish infantry. Infantry can't really be broken by cavalry, things like that. You're getting away from that, but I am not sure they really are. Because the thing they've done is they've sort of said, well, there's a lot of light infantry in this world which run super fast, almost like they were horses. That's kind of how it feels. Like, oh yeah, that's not cavalry. Those are just guys who move 3 times as fast as the soldiers on other foot soldiers, and who can sort of slash in and out just like cavalry do. And I'm a little concerned that like the direction implies a deviation in gameplay and tactics, but they've just kind of hedged and reskinned. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I think one thing that did kind of come through very clearly in the demo I played is that there really is a wide variety of what they describe as like weight classes in units. This is, at the very heaviest, if you're like, I was playing Hector's army in this battle. It was Hector versus Achilles. Hector, as you might expect, the defender of the walls of Troy, his army is really, really slow. Like, it's not quite immobile, but the core of it is heavily armored guys who are almost unbreakable in a frontal attack. It's a bit like they're like World War I tanks, right? Where like they just crawl forward, but they also can't be stopped, right? Like that's the threat they present. But then everything around them is about controlling empty space, right? Like skirmishers are able to sort of zip in, hit units like that from the side where the armor is thinner. So a lot of it becomes about like unit facing and disabling the advantages of shields and different types of armor, which that did feel pretty dramatically different, right? Like Achilles' troops were all light, assault troops, very, very fast, very aggressive. And playing that army versus Hector, it did feel like, okay, so these are two sides that require completely different tactics. That much was kind of familiar from like the Total Warhammer games. And I hope there's a lot of that flavor that comes through, because my concern is if it's just 50 different flavors of, and then if you thought those skirmishers were fast, check out these really fast guys over here. That will start to feel, I think, a little corny.
Is there speaking of the kind of style element of it, I think one of the things that set Total War Three Kingdoms apart was the many aesthetic ways that they evoked, the Three Kingdoms period of China, and evoked a sort of popular understanding of ancient China with certain visual techniques, music, character design, all that stuff, right? Like they're playing in a pretty well trod territory, and yet still kind of stood out there. Does this feel the way you want like ancient Greece, mythical Greece to feel?
I don't know that it does. I think, to me, visually, it presents a lot like Rome Total War in Rome 2, which I think had kind of a desaturated starkness to it. And I think they're going for starkness, right? Like this is the fields and hills of modern day Turkey, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of it's a Mediterranean climate on the edge of the desert. So it's going to be a lot of scrubland. It's going to be a lot of, olive groves and such, and then in the background, like, berms separating fields from the desert. You're gonna have a lot of that, but it does look. The result is a game that looks awfully fucking brown, at least in the demo. Right. And I'm sure there's going to be other biomes that we see, right? Like if this is a Total War game, chances are there's a version where the Trojans can somehow come kick the ass of the Greeks, right? Where it goes so epically wrong that the Trojans reach Ithaca before Odysseus does. But that isn't what I saw, and it did have it did pose kind of a challenge distinguishing all but the most identifiable units, right? Like it wasn't one of those things where you could easily tell at a glance which type of melee troop was holding that section of the line, which type of skirmisher was out there. From a distance, it was a lot of little dudes running around, and it didn't quite have that sense of immediate, like, iconic imagery that Three Kingdoms possesses, and that's a tough part. I think this is where I think it's really tough to be Total War Troy right now. The Saga series is already kind of in a weird place because it is trying to tell smaller, more focused stories ostensibly than the main Total War games. Game?
Is this they've one retconned this, right?
They've retconned Total War Shogun 2 Fall of the Samurai into being a saga.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah, they reached way back and they were like, that's basically an example of what we want to do. And if you did play Fall of the Samurai, that game rules. Like, that might be... If Shogun 2 was like the best Total War, Fall of the Samurai, for a long time, I think it was, Fall of the Samurai might have been the best part of Shogun 2 by the end. Like, it was both an awesome samurai warfare game, but also a really good, like, 19th century, like, rifled musket warfare game, right? Like, it did all of that really, really well. So they've retconned that and they've decided that's a saga that tells a really focused story. They made Thrones of Britannia, which we covered, I think, like 2 years ago when it came out. It wasn't very good. It felt very uninspired in a lot of places, and it did kind of have a deep sense of jank to it. Like, lots of things about it just didn't work very well. So this is the second, like, new Total War Saga that they're making as part of this new initiative. Technically, I guess it's the third game, but Fall of the Samurai doesn't really count, right? They made that as a standalone many years ago before this saga's branding was dreamed up. And I think it's unfortunate because Thrones of Britannia did kind of feel like it was the off-brand budget version of Total War. And I'm not sure Troy would give me that vibe, except for the fact that in the intervening time, Three Kingdoms came out and completely recalibrated my sense of, like, what a Total War game can be.
Right. If this had just been the follow-up to Saga Britannia, you'd be like, oh, you know what? Maybe they're getting this thing back on track. And now it has a much firmer internal competition.
Yeah, and, like, mind you, I think, and this is where I think it's going to be so important to see what that campaign is, and that's the thing they couldn't tell me too much about.
Right.
Because one of the things they sort of painted here is that, yes, there's the factions, but a bit like the Warhammer series, each faction is kind of inflected by which hero you're playing, right? So the easy example is, Hector is the Trojan army, and there's going to be certain Trojan units, but then also there's those super heavy infantry that, like, only he has access to. Mm-hmm. Like, Hector has elite, like, guard units that nobody else has. His brother Paris is also a Trojan general, but he has elite ranged units at his disposal, right? So like both armies are going to be a little bit hardier than like what Achilles has in some ways, but they're going to express their faction identity different through what their heroes' perceived strengths are. I was really excited as one of the developers was telling me, it was Milko Vasilev, sorry if I got that name wrong, but was talking about how Odysseus basically doesn't have any impressive units. Like Odysseus can't win a stand-up fight, but his units are all really resilient, and they excel at like guerrilla hit and run tactics. And so Odysseus just kind of is about wearing people down and outlasting them. I'm curious how those faction identities express themselves on the strategic stage, right? Like, and what does that even look like? Because the Iliad is about the siege of one city. The whole thing takes place, basically on the coast of Asia Minor and the Aegean Islands. That's the stage. What does the campaign of that story look like? Is it just going to be Is it just going to be the Aegean in the Bronze Age, or are you going to reimagine that the world of the siege becomes the world of a Total War map, which could be a really interesting thing with ramifications for dynamics on that map? But I think it will require some kind of rabbit coming out of the hat for the strategic game for this thing to read as really cool.
Yeah. Well, I will save my remaining questions for when this game comes. What is there a release date on this?
Yeah, and naturally, I don't have it in front of me.
It's fine. This year, presumably, right? This feels like a thing that they would get out pretty quick.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm gonna ask one question. Here we go. An important one. Did the Minotaur see combat outside of the labyrinth that I missed? Was the Minotaur part of the Trojan War? I thought dude was just in the labyrinth, and then Theseus showed up.
It was all in the same neighborhood.
He just like rolled through. He was like, yeah, I can help you with that too.
Yeah, I think that's basically like, it's sort of like he was such a badass, he got his own story, right? He got his own deal, like the spin-off movie.
I see.
But really, he was probably back there. Yeah, I think that's the thing I think that's the position they're adopting.
Okay. I have a follow-up question, important follow-up question. Do you think Orlando Bloom felt bad when he was cast as Troy, as like, I guess all I can do is like mythological arrow dudes?
I think a lot of people felt bad
about
as
Troy.
Part of that picture. Yeah, like I was watching some clips of it today to refresh my memory, because like it's a movie I have a weird fondness of in some ways. Like, first of all, it's one of our last great Peter O'Toole performances.
Sure.
And like he does bring the goods in the scene he has with Brad Pitt. The problem is Brad Pitt's horribly miscast. He just doesn't play Achilles as Brad Pitt. He plays Achilles as Brad Pitt trying to do like some sort of stage acting. And I think if he just leaned into the essential Brad Pittness of his performances, I think that would be a really convincing Achilles.
Yeah, I would be here for that. I haven't seen that movie. I saw the movie when it came out, and I remember being like, "Oh, I like it when Brad Pitt stabbed that dude in the side of the shoulder. It was a cool jump stab he did." That's all I remember about that movie.
That was pretty cool. It's like, how do you show he's the most badass warrior in a time where, like, theoretically in this movie anybody could be got at any moment?
Right.
It's like, oh, this dude just doesn't care. He just comes and fucks people up. Like, you're like,
up.
All right, time to get ready for the fight, and you're dead.
Mm-hmm. All right. You know what? We should take a break, and when we come back, we can talk about some more stuff. I checked. I couldn't find all I found was 2020 was the only date that I saw for this. So, maybe if there's a more specific date out there, it should be easier to find. Up here it is. I found it. August 13th. I found it. It took me 1 extra second. All right. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. The other thing that I've been playing, the one thing that I've been playing the most, I think, maybe this week, is probably Valorant, which actually dropped.
Yeah.
Like is out
It's
now.
out,
You can go
out.
play Valorant.
Anyone can do it.
It is free to play, as far as I
Yes.
know. I spent money on some gun skins because I'm a fool.
Already bought the battle pass.
Well, so here's the thing: is if you were in the beta, you could buy skins in the beta, and you wouldn't get to keep them. But what you would do is get your money back in Valorant bucks. So no, you wouldn't get your money back. You would get Valorant bucks equal to whatever you put into the system,
V-Bucks?
plus V-Bucks, plus 20%. So I came in with 20% more than I put into the beta, which was enough for me to get a bunch of, like a pack of very pretty. My guns make laser gun sounds now, and they load like a cool crystal instead of bullets.
Oh,
and they load from the top instead of the bottom. And then when you kill someone, it goes like, oh, and then a shiny wolf head shows
Like Wolfman
up.
Jack?
Wolfman Jack shows up. I don't know if it actually howls, but a wolf shows up and like eviscerates the body of your opponent, not with its wolf-like features, but with like a laser blast from the heavens. Only if it's the last kill of the game or the last kill of the round. It's like very celebratory. And that's Valorant. Moving on. No. Cado, are you keeping up? Have you been playing?
Yes, absolutely. I needed to distract myself in some way. And they added a new game mode, which is very weird. It feels so different from the base game. So it's called Spike Rush, and normally there's only one spike, right? There's a attack and defend, and if you're attacking, you're trying to plant that spike. Or you can just kill the entire other team, but it's usually harder to do that way sometimes. Depends on who you ask. Honestly, I feel like it's harder to try to get all those kills than to plant the spike and defend, but people seem to like playing deathmatch a lot. I don't know. Anyways, everyone in Spike Rush has a spike, so immediately anyone can plant that, which means that grouping up is less needed. It's more of a spread out game, it feels like, where as defenders you have to watch all angles because any one person of the other team can get in and plant a spike at any of the sites. So it's a lot faster that way. It's also faster just in that you played first to 4, I believe, or 4 or 5, I forget. I think it's 4. And there's also these upgrades on the ground that you can pick up that are like hyper speed, gain your ultimate right away, decay the entire team, which temporarily brings everyone's health points down to like, I don't know, like 30 points, which is like one.
It's like
it brings
50
everyone
or under to like 1 or 2 shots. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone on the enemy team, no matter where they are, you don't have to see them. It's just like full. Everyone health is down to like 1 or 2 shots, like wild things like that, and it just feels...
only for like a few. Just to be clear, only for like a couple of seconds. It's like a thing where like you could grab it and go, all right, let's push right now because the enemy has has no health. Let's like, even if you're not good like me at this game, I'll still be able to get a few shots in and probably win a fight I would lose otherwise. Let's go.
Right. And that's been really fun, especially because the games are so short. It's very easy to jump in and just do a few every once in a while, like 10-minute games at most sometimes. But it's also completely broken how I play that game when I play regular. Something about getting too many Spike Rush games in before a regular game like kind of has broken my aiming and thought about watching corners again and things like that, because Spike Rush is everyone's so spread out that it's less about watching those specific angles and more about kind of keeping an eye on openings.
People also just play weird in Spike Rush. People run through smoke. People like don't care. People play because in a regular match of Valorant, dying sucks because you lose whatever equipment you have. You don't gain if you haven't gotten any kills or done put the bomb on the
right. That's the other thing. They take out
site,
in Spike Rush. There's no economy.
You
always have all of your.
Exactly.
You always get all of your abilities, which normally you would have to buy up.
You don't have to buy
round.
a gun.
You don't have to buy a gun. Everyone has the same gun. There are upgrades on the field where you can upgrade to the next gun, which kind of gives you an advantage that way. But Yeah, other than that, everything has been kind of flattened and evened out. Which which like kind of lets you use your abilities in a way that you wouldn't normally. Like I've somehow moving through the space, I like run faster in Spike Rush and like am kind of more careless a little bit, but I still have this the like don't use your abilities as much because of I keep forgetting to use them, even though I should be just throwing them off whenever it feels right. But it's completely at odds with the way you should play regular games, and just like something about the muscle memory keeps messing me up, so I have to like take a game or two in between to like recalibrate, which has been weird. But I don't know, I've been having a lot of fun with Spike Rush. What do you think about it?
It's same as you. I think the thing that you just hit of like playing it too many times in a row throws you off before your main game is true for me. And so I tend to only use it as a cooldown game, as like, we don't have time for a full game. Does anyone have time for a Spike Rush? Let's do a Spike Rush. Otherwise, I will say that like I've had really high highs since the game came out, and then also some matches where I've just been. Last night I had some matches that were just cursed, just like absolutely. And I think that part of that is there's a huge new injection of people, which means sometimes the matchmaking is not as good as it once was.
And it reset everyone's matchmaking too, right? Like
exactly,
everyone started from zero, so it's still figuring out like skill levels and stuff for everyone.
Totally. And so I think there's a degree to which it's like, I think I went 13-1 or 13-2 yesterday in one match. It's like that's not fun. Like it's fine, but it's not what I want. And then I had matches where I lost 13-5 or 6, and that's not fun either, obviously. What I love is when those matches are really tight and you end up losing by a couple of rounds or even one round, and everyone has had some good plays and everyone feels like they're in their part. And I have had those moments still, and I think I'll have more once the matchmaking kind of settles over the next week or two. The thing that has been the other thing about this is like this new update the full release has a new map and a new agent, and I'm not really sure how I feel about each yet, or either yet. The map is interesting. It has like a much bigger. I know we're talking about a very particular type of game without doing, and if you don't have familiarity with it, it can be kind of tough to explain, or you can kind of reach like, I've played Counter-Strike or I've played Team Fortress 2 or, and it doesn't quite map to that. Like, or sorry, if Counter-Strike would work. I meant Call of Duty. If you played Call of Duty, it doesn't feel like Call of Duty, right? It doesn't have that same feeling of like, I mean, some general things are still the same. You understand what, like, you don't want to be in open territory. You don't want to just be like out in the middle of nothing where it could be shot at from 8 different angles. That doesn't feel good in any first-person shooter, any multiplayer first-person shooter. But it's really felt strongly here. And yeah, Counter-Strike is obviously a good comparison to some degree. Maybe Rainbow Six Siege is. But the new map has this huge open area in the middle that I'm still trying to learn the sight lines on and learn where to put. So the character I play can kind of summon airborne like smoke grenades to block off lines of sight. He kind of produces little orbs of smoke on the ground. Very perfect, like perfectly geometrical. This is not like smoke wafting in the breeze. No, this is just a dome. It's a sphere of smoke. And I'm learning like, where do I put those here? And the importance of that is like, until I understand all of that stuff, and I've made some good progress in terms of like, I think maybe here and here, is that the importance is that when I'm on a map that I know, I can still feel productive on that map, even if my shooting skills aren't up to par against the other team, right? Even if I'm losing 1v1s, I can set up smoke for my team so that we can make really dramatic pushes onto site to plant a bomb, or I can reduce visibility for other people. Or I can use my other skills to create choke points. With a new map, it's like there's this learning period where you're like, I guess over here, I think this will work. And that process is really fun. It just means that I've had some games where I've been like, yikes. I also got my first ace though, finally, which is when you take out the entire other team.
That's awesome.
That was really fun.
Describe it for us.
Okay. I mean, I can just show it to you.
Like, did people file in front of your sites, or was it like
it was earned.
Out?
It was a clutch out. It was earned. It was here. I'll send it to you. The thing that happens in it, like, is, first of all, it was kind of an eco round for me, which is an eco round is when you don't have a lot of money. And so you gotta you can't buy there's 2 good guns in this game, right? There's a lot of good guns.
Yeah.
There's 2 this is the rifle. You either get the
wow, they really lovingly recreated Counter-Strike.
Dude, the best sniper rifle is called the Operator, which means everyone just calls it the Op.
Yeah.
It is literally
they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Here, I'll just link you this because I put it on YouTube because it was too big to send via Discord to someone. So I had this I guess light machine gun. It has 50 rounds. It's called the Ares. It's fine. It's not great. I was playing a character I don't know very well, Phoenix, who I haven't played since launch. He does these flashbangs around grenades, except instead of flashbang grenades, they are he snaps his fingers and summons a little ball of fire and then flicks it around a corner and then it explodes in a ball of bright light and briefly blinds anyone who sees it. And so I kind of come onto the site. It's all 5 of us. We come onto the site and I'm like, okay, we're going to do a big push. No one gets blinded by my first attempt. I see Jet, who is this character who has knives, dash away to this corner. She actually, I don't think this was intentional, but it's pretty, actually, I guess it is. She throws a ball of smoke and then dashes into it to kind of get away from an incoming attack from someone else. And I just start dumping into that ball of smoke, and I miss her 100%. But then I rush into the ball of smoke, and that's a good decision on my part. That's me after weeks and weeks of playing this game being I'm going to go in there after her because I bet her back is to the wall and she's about to come out. And that's exactly what happened. She jumps out of it. I'm behind her. I blast her. So that's 1 kill. In the time that it took me to do that one thing, 3 of my teammates have died. It's gone from a 5v5 to a 2v4, which does not feel good. Someone calls out that they think someone is in a kind of nearby hallway, and they are not. But I kind of push through that hallway and out into another open area, and I see one person kind of partially concealed behind a wall, another person out in the open.
That's some disgraceful camping. That second person,
that's
that's
not
on their game. So that was the one they gave you. Okay.
That's the one they gave me, 100%. I use the rules from. You ever play those old Flash sniper games where it's a stick man and you're shooting other stick men, and you go, okay, I got to shoot the one who can't see. I have to shoot the one who won't be seen by everybody else because they'll know I'm there. So I started from the back and shot the first dude who was an omen, who's a teleporty guy. You have a question, Rob?
Actually, right after these double kill, I have a question about your next decision.
Okay, sure, absolutely. So kill these 2 guys. I kill an omen and a phoenix, which leaves me in an interesting position. Now we're 2v2. I know that I have one person on site with me on my team. That other player is playing Reyna, who is the new hero, the new agent, they're called. She is very good if you can pop off. Her whole thing is if you get a kill, you can use the soul of the person you kill to heal yourself and even overheal yourself and get shields, basically. And then she can also, if she kills someone, she can also turn invisible and invincible to move around. She is a nightmare. I hate fighting against her. I don't know that I love her design. She's very strong. She's also extremely, again, in the type of character of she looks a lot like Sombra.
She looks a lot like Sombra.
And it's now we're now 3 for 3 for hero shooters, having evil Latina characters who fit a very similar design. I think Loba's physical design is a little bit more distinct than Reyna is from Sombra, but anyway.
Here's my question.
I have a Reyna. On the other team, they have a Reyna and a Breach. Breach is good at disorienting you. And I have to make a decision. And also, we don't have the bomb. The bomb is dead in front of me across a hallway or across a kind of an open area of fire. And I have to decide, do I want to go try to get the bomb? Rob.
Yeah, okay. So it's that in that open area, your teammate starts getting peppered with fire, correct?
Correct.
The other team...
From a place called Baths. If you think of a square and you think top left is A, top right is B, bottom left is C, bottom right is D, right? A, B. I guess I can go all the way. Just do what I just did. A, B, C, D. I'm in D. my partner is in A, they have someone in B, and they have someone in D, right? So it's kind of like they're on the right-hand side of the square, we're on the left-hand side of the square, and we are kind of equidistant at this point.
So it looks like they're kind of locked in on your teammate.
Well, there's one locked in on me. If you look, the sniper in what's called heaven shoots
the sniper
across.
Just whiffs.
He whiffs.
Yeah.
That whiff is what gives me this ace. That whiff ends this round.
That's why you pop the smoke.
That's why I popped the. Yeah, I have an ability called I forget what it's called, but it's like a curtain of fire basically that gives cover and prevents you from getting headshot across a long distance. But you're right that in the time that it takes me to make that decision, my teammate gets killed 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
There's basically 2 1v1s happening in that moment, right? There's one that I should have lost if that sniper doesn't miss, and there's one that my teammate loses because that's just it's a hard fight. You shoot across from one end of a square to the other. Someone loses, someone wins. That just happens. So now it's 1v2. I put up this wall of fire, which is like, if you've seen the cinematic trailer for this character, he does this in the trailer. That gives me enough cover to start to run to the other side of the map. There are 2 bomb sites on each map, or there's one map that has 3, but most of them have 2. And there's a couple ways to get there on this map. There's running through a hallway filled with, it's a kind of like a market, an open air market that we call spices. And there's a teleporter. And I decided to not use the teleporter, and instead I use the long hallway. I don't feel good about that decision. I think in retrospect I should have teleported, but it doesn't matter because I get there, I plant the bomb in a place that's kind of open. There's a bunch of places on this site that you plant this bomb. There's a big metal like cargo container you could plant the bomb inside of. There is kind of a back site and a front site is kind of how we talk about it. And the front is pretty open. The back is pretty, protected. I plant it in the open front left of this site. For people listening, we're playing on a map called Bind. If you're like desperate to see what the fuck I'm talking about. And I plant it there because for them to defuse the bomb, they have to be in kind of an open position. If I plant it in the back site, they would get the cover, or inside the cargo container, they would get the protection of being in one of those places. And so I planted open. And then I sat and waited, and I was like, I hope someone comes the way I'm looking. And that's just luck that that the Reyna comes literally hopping in. I think she's bunny hopping for speed, maybe? I don't know why she does this. She's jumping backwards. Maybe she thinks that I'm down the hallway. She wants to make sure I'm not behind her, which that's giving me way more credit than I deserve. But I light her up, and then I turn the corner once I hear that someone is defusing the bomb. Or no, I don't. I ult. This character has an ult called Run It Back. And what Phoenix does is he's a Phoenix, right? So he he isn't a Phoenix. He's like a black dude from England, but he has Phoenix-like abilities regarding fire. And so he can kind of charge into a place, do some damage, and if he gets killed in that period, or if the timer runs out, he snaps back to where you were when you initiated the power. So that happens. I'll come back. I put a Molotov basically on the bomb to kind of delay the person from getting to it to try to defuse it. And then he comes up to defuse it anyway. I fire a few shots at where I think he will be. He is not there. And I realize that where I've placed it gives him some cover where he could try to defuse it from within the container. But it turns out that you can shoot through that container. And so I shoot through the container and get my fifth kill. Thank you for letting me.
Because I could not figure out that kill for the because visually
kill,
that container looks invulnerable. That does
not
look like a surface you would shoot through.
Totally. There are different bullet patterns that show up when you hit different things. Some of them are what we call wall bangable, and some of them are not. That container is bangable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's very good.
Which I almost fucked up. Right. I was like, oh my god, where is he? Is he? But like, I can't see where he is. And then he was there. So it worked out.
Yeah.
And
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a messy. It's that's not.
I think
the best
you'd made
play.
the right choice. Running.
I think I made good choices. You think so?
Yes, because the teleporter gives you away and they rotate faster.
You're right. Part
of this is that they rotate slow in a way, and they try to do a wraparound on each end, right? They're trying to come from 2 different angles, and one of those angles is actually slower to get to. So the other one, they didn't communicate,
You're right?
That Reyna comes up before the other person's on site.
They should have pushed at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. But that happens because they they didn't start moving until the bomb was down. And at that point, there's this pressure of, there's a timer.
We got to get over there.
We have to get over
exactly.
there. Right.
Exactly.
And that's where they make those mistakes. So I think that was actually a good choice.
Okay, I appreciate it. And so I think like me being able to tell that story is why I like this game. It's like it's a tale as old as time at this point. I like to be able to narrativize what I play in competitive games, and the way that the abilities interlock here. It was very funny for me to like get stuck playing this character who I don't play at all, but it's the character that was in the new trailer, and then I like used all of my abilities in this ace in different ways. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, yeah. That trailer is nothing like this game, but also it's everything like this game. Like, absolutely threw the wall up in order to give me protection. Absolutely use the Molotov to try to keep a space under control. Like, all that stuff is very, it's very fun to be able to use that stuff and be able to tell a story about it. And I think this is also part of why I like watching this game more than I like watching Overwatch or a number of other kind of first, like Call of Duty certainly, is there is a sequence of events. There is legibility for me. And that legibility is definitely something I had to learn from playing the game, but it also does come from the outsized, abilities. It comes from really interesting map design. It comes from things like Cado, I don't know if you have it set this way, but I have character outlines on, and I have them set to yellow, which I find way more legible than red. Yeah, I have a really hard time picking. As far as I know, I'm not colorblind. I've done tests and stuff.
Yeah.
But I have a really hard time picking out the red outline that shows up around enemies versus this bright yellow one.
Wait, there's an outline?
Oh, Cado. Yeah. That's what that glow is. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever even noticed that there was really a glow. I just like kind of
red
know
by default,
or half know. I have been caught out in some times where I'm like, oh, I thought that was my teammate, but that wasn't.
Totally.
So you can just change the color to whatever.
I think there's a few sets. I think there's two different yellows and there's a purple. The two yellows look the same to me because I think that they're tied to colorblind options basically.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would love to be able to have it where you could just set it to whatever. Right. I imagine there are certain colors that they would think give you an advantage or something, but I would love a bright blue. You know what I mean? I would love something that really stands out because I need all the help I can get, frankly.
Now that I think about it, I guess there is an outline on enemies. Yeah. It just never really, this yellow looks so much more it made it so much more obvious that they were is there also a slider on like the intensity of the outline, or is it just?
I don't think so.
Colors?
I think it's just pick the color.
Wow. I think that yellow is just so much brighter than the red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it is. That's how it feels to me too, for sure.
Yeah. Have you been? You've been playing a lot of the other characters this time around because people keep taking my characters.
I mostly play Brim. I played a little bit of Phoenix. But no, have you branched out?
I made the mistake of maining one of the characters that is not unlocked at first.
Who is? Omen. Right.
Yeah, I played a lot of Omen in the beta, and I just
and now
unlocked
you have to re-unlock him.
Omen last night.
Okay.
But for that first day and a half or whatever that I've been playing, it's a lot of like, okay, I can go back. My backup is Sage, but then Sage gets picked, and I'm like, I've not touched any of these other people. So I've now had experiences with just about all of them at this point, just like having to like pick whoever's left over because a lot of people don't have anyone unlocked as well. And there's only the 5, right? Like you pick
to start. Yep.
So like everyone has to pick one. And that's been an interesting. I'm kind of actually surprised at how much, even though I had never done these actions, being on the opposite end of them, I understood kind of how a lot of those abilities worked, and which I think I'm not exactly sure what it says about this. What I'm trying to say is that I think it feels like really, it felt really good to be able to do that, even though I've never actually played any of those characters, and like I still had the games. Which did
you find a character who you were like, wow, this character's actually sick, I should play this character more?
I think Phoenix. Yeah, like I kind of shied away from initiators in general after having some bad experiences with Jet, and not really understanding her kit very much. She's more of like the dashy and like clouds. They upped her clouds, which is nice actually.
Yeah.
Those last longer now. Before they were very short.
It's so silly to be like, oh wow, they made it go from 5 seconds to 7 seconds, but that's a huge difference
forever.
When it comes.
It's forever.
When like it takes. Sometimes you're in a situation where like we have to hold this for 3 more seconds.
Right.
You know.
Right. Totally. But yeah, I had kind of defaulted more to the controlling characters, which are the ones that drop like like Brim and Omen both have smokes that last very long and are about like sight lines, and Omen's a little more leaning towards like using those tricks to kind of get flanks and like be sneaky, and Brim's obviously more about like, you know, blocking off sight lines in order to like move on to points. But still, like that's kind of the play style I was sticking to. And then I had a couple games where I had to play Phoenix, and it was really interesting to play like and understand why enemies make certain decisions about how they use their abilities. Because I would like, one example is like I had the Molotov, right? The fire pool that he puts down that also heals him, which I don't think I ever realized.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I like remember not seeing it very often. I'm like, I feel like people should be using Phoenix's thing to like hold points more. And it's like, oh, they're just holding it to heal themselves. That's what they're using it for. That makes much more sense now, which I don't think I realized. I thought it was just the wall that healed them, but apparently it's any of their fire.
I think the wall actually heals a little bit worse, or maybe it's in line with that was one of the patch notes.
Which is why you see the wall used more for the actual sight line for the blocking and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. And also why sometimes you'll see someone throw up a wall and then not run past it quickly because they're standing behind it or standing in it getting healed for a second before they leave. Yeah. I think that it is so funny to me feeling like when I first started playing this game, Phoenix was a character that I couldn't play as because he felt selfish and I didn't understand how to contribute. And now of the duelist class characters, Phoenix feels like the most like cooperative, or the most he has the most going on that helps my team between a wall and the blinds. Like those are both big helpers. Like I love it when I'm with a Phoenix now because it's like, all right, you can help me get around this corner. Also it means, and this is the stuff that I'm like only just getting to in my head now, even though this is not like hard skill-based play or something, but it means like, for instance, you don't need to put a Sage with a Phoenix. Right, the Sage's heals can go elsewhere. The Sage doesn't need to heal a Phoenix or now a Reyna. Those are characters who can heal themselves if they play well. And so that's like such an interesting, different consideration in terms of tactical composition and where you're putting people on the map and all that other stuff. So, Rob, sorry for boring you with all of this like. It turns out Cado and I have really been playing this game.
Yeah.
I think we thought we were playing this game. We were playing this game, like, I think it's pretty good. I'm very curious to see how the rollout of other stuff goes. A map and a character is a big thing to just like pop on people at launch. Competitive, I think, is probably going to be a few weeks away. Is my guess. They've basically said like we're waiting until it's the right time for it. We're not going to rush it out just because it was in beta. So I think that'll be big. And then I don't know. I don't know if how many characters to expect in the first year of play. I don't know how often to expect there to be new maps or if it's just going to be like, all right, we're going to keep honing this thing pretty well. So that's Valorant. That's Valorant, baby. That's it. That's eco, baby.
That's eco, baby.
It's eco when you do anything that saves you money in a game of Valorant, even if you've absolutely lost the round and played poorly. What you get to do is say, that's eco, baby. As long as you do one thing.
We'll fix it in post.
It absolutely is. Because it's like, next round's going to be easier. Listen, that's eco. We lost 4 of our 5 people and then the round, but you got away with a gun. That's eco, baby. So what else is going on, Cado? I know you're playing some other stuff.
So there was a gap actually in Valorant, right? From last Thursday through Tuesday. And that's also part of when a lot of these protests and everything started popping off. And so I spent a lot of time on the internet just kind of sharing things, following the news, and I needed at a certain point to just not look at the internet for a little bit. Yeah. And there was this, I was just like looking for anything kind of simple and easy to digest. And there was this code that I had gotten for Nintendo's Clubhouse Games. Wait, what's the actual title?
Clubhouse. It's Clubhouse Games.
Yeah, it's like
right?
Clubhouse Games something. Clubhouse Games
51.
51 Worldwide Classics.
That's 51. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of games. And it turned out to be pretty freaking great. I got really obsessed with Mahjong for a while. But the way this game is set up essentially is that they have a bunch of like what you think of as like traditional board games. There's like Mancala, there's chess, you got checkers, you've got your shogi, you got your mahjong, you got solitaire, you got, I'm not gonna read out the whole
Hare
51
and Hound,
list.
Nine Men's Morris.
Well, here's that was the thing. I was like, and then there's like some that
The
I have never
classics.
fucking heard of. Yeah, absolutely. Hare and Hound, like also there's some like non-litigious
Hounds.
like options like hit and blow, which
Oh, that's Mastermind.
that's Mastermind.
I'm looking at Hit and Blow. That's Mastermind.
Also, what a name.
What a name.
Or like what is it called? Last Card, which is just Uno.
Oh, that's Uno.
But it's
4 in a
called
row. That's
Last
Connect
Card.
4. I know Connect
Yeah.
4 when I see it.
Yeah.
Damn,
but
they got
what's
Connect
really
4 on Switch now? Damn.
yeah, it's great. They've got they've got Connect 5 too. Gomoku, which is Connect 5 on a Go board. I wish they had real Go, but I kind of understand why it probably
Wait, do they
didn't
not have Go? Oh,
No,
they don't have
and I
real
think it has
Go.
to do with the AI. Because
Oh, sure.
the kind of structure here of if you're just kind of playing through is like you can just play against AI. Well, first thing I did actually was I wanted to test out the touch, the single switch multiplayer touch games.
Mhm.
Which basically any kind of board game that you can imagine a board being there and you playing with another person, you can do that here. So like you can play like Mancala or checkers just by laying the switch down on a table, and you use the touchscreen that never gets used to move the pieces around. And that all worked great. Like me and my wife Christina sat down, we played a bunch of games, had a good time not paying attention to the news for a little bit. That was really nice. The second thing is then I started to just kind of poke around solo, and there's kind of every time you go into a game for the first time, they do this funny little skit where they have like this rotating cast of like characters, a couple of people that recur, of like this one guy, this one woman, and a pair of kids also that all kind of like poke fun at each other. They're actually really kind of cute, funny skits that like halfway kind of explain the sense of the game. And then there's also a tutorial where you can go through and like learn all of these games. And some of them are pretty simple, like Mancala or checkers, like things that you've like already heard of before. But things that are like super complicated, like fucking Mahjong in here, have
Right.
like multi-step tutorials, and it's actually
awesome.
like really like so far all the tutorials for games that are a little more complicated have been really well thought out. Like it really helped me get into understanding not just the basics of the game, but how like you can play beyond knowing the rules, right? Like once you start thinking about, or like they like put you on the road to start thinking about strategy beyond the baseline in games like like the one that I got really into is Mahjong. And what's interesting is that they also have different AI levels. So like there's these objectives for each game where it's basically just like beat the AI of each level, and there's like 4 levels for every single game. Like it starts on normal, hard, and then like you actually I don't think I have the other ones unlocked. Let me double check what they're called. It's like normal, hard, impossible, normal, hard, amazing, and impossible. And you unlock them only once you've beaten the AI once of the previous level. And even on normal for some of these games, like they're not making necessarily like completely ridiculous, like bad moves. It's like, it feels incredibly like playing a game with another person where someone like misses something, but like even on normal, it's not it's not a cakewalk, which is
Right.
a very interesting kind of baseline to put on like what seems like seemingly simple games, you know. And like the challenge ramps up pretty quickly. I haven't beaten hard mahjong yet, and there's still 2 more levels above that. So I'm like, I like, and like that's the thing about a lot of these games, and a lot of the reason that these games have kind of stood the test of time is that they're kind of infinitely replayable. Some of them are, and this is interesting too. They like kind of shout out when some of them are solved games, meaning that there's a theoretical perfect game to play that everyone kind of knows about. Like Nine Men's Morris explains in its tutorial that it is a solved game, so you could look up and do the perfect play.
Here is
for
the
that.
thing to do, right?
Yeah, which is funny, but if you don't know that, it's still kind of a hard game. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I've been really enjoying the way that they tutorialize and the tools that they've added. For like example, for shogi. Which is, if you've ever played chess, it's very similar, except that there's more pieces, and you can kind of level up pieces essentially once you reach a certain level of the board. They have like a threat map, basically, to show where your pieces would be in danger of being captured, like as like an assist, right? Like it makes the board colored in blue and red, and like there'll be like spaces where you can see that either you can there's like a third like kind of darker color that shows a place where you could put a piece, and when that gets captured you could capture the piece that goes there even, right? Like it's like you can put a piece here to get sacrificed and you'll have a response color.
Right. Wow, that's a lot. Which is like the stuff that if you've played a lot of shogi, you probably just you know how to look for that stuff.
Right.
But if you've never looked for it before,
I feel like I turned it off for a little bit. I was like, this is too much. There's too many new pieces that I'm still learning. So the thread board was like, I can still play this, even though like I'm still not quite understanding, because there's so many different, the move sets are different in a way where like, oh yeah, that's a knight basically, that's a rook basically. And then there's ones that are like, you can move forward, diagonally forward to the left, diagonally forward to the right, and then straight backwards, but not left or right. I'm like, whoa, okay. Like, that's very specific. And then there's one that adds left or right to that. And I'm like, shit, how do I remember which one of these is the other one?
Oh, wow.
And,
yeah, I just found a screenshot of it, and like that is a lot of information added to there's multiple different shades, like you said, different geometrical, like, yeah, wow.
It's really, really cool. And like they do this for a bunch of those types of games too, or like there's assist modes that seem really well thought out and like really help you kind of ease into games that are maybe more complicated on their face than they may appear at first. And yeah, I've been having a lot of fun just kind of losing time to really getting into Mahjong a lot. Riichi Mahjong, which I think
Had you
is the
played
Japanese
Mahjong
version.
before, or is this
No,
is this
not
the
at
first
all.
time?
I was just curious because I like, you see it in media a lot as this game that is played all the time, and I'd never tried it or even looked up, because like you need a certain amount, like it's one of those like there's a high barrier to entry in real life to have a like entire Mahjong set. I feel like it's a big amount of space because there's so many tiles. I was like, all right, I've never had an opportunity to actually try this game out. Let's see what it's like. It's really fun. I mean, you can kind of equate the tiles to like cards, and it's kind of like supposedly it's similar to Jin Rummy. I've never played Jin Rummy either.
Yeah, you're making sets, right?
You're making sets.
Yeah. That's similar.
But there's also a lot of very, very specific hands that you can make that are not normal sets of like, it's either sets of 3, usually either a straight, basically like, numerical order, or a triplet, right? But there are a bunch of special hands that are worth more that totally break that rule set, right? It's like a set of 7 pairs, for example, is really good and also very difficult to get.
Because that's across different, those are like, there are pairs on these.
It's not just the pairs
tiles.
have to be, there's the tiles are broken up into 4 suits, 3 numbered suits, and 1 suit that is like called the honors, which are like the winds, so like north wind, west wind, south wind, east wind, and different dragons, a white dragon, a green dragon, a red dragon. For the numbered suits, essentially, you have to the pairs you have to make have to be within the suit, right? So you can't just get 3 ones of one of each suit and that be a triplet. But there is a specific hand where you get all 1s and 9s, and they can be either in pairs or triplets, and that still works. And it's just like,
sure,
like,
yeah, it's a lot
because they have like special names that like make sense and
right.
So
and it shows you what those are on.
Here's the thing:
as
so
you're building them,
when what it does is like there's a list that you can just look through all of the special ones, and it also gives you a recommended. It like takes a quick look, and it's like, you're 3 away from this. These are the ones that you could make with like the right draws, right? Which has been really helpful in kind of learning. But what it doesn't do is give you the odds on that ever. Like, so it's very much still this thing where you're learning through having the resource of having the hands there. What you're learning is kind of like, what are the odds? Like, let me look at what's been when you discard a tile, like it's open, like everyone knows what you've thrown out.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to do the odds in your head of like, I know there's this many of those tiles left. Is so and so holding on to one? Like that's where you're starting to learn the strategy. But like if I didn't have that like hands reference, I would be more worried about learning that hands thing. So it's like the way they assist, I think, is very smartly chosen about helping people get into playing the game at a more advanced level than like if I were just learning this Mahjong game, it would be mostly about remembering those hands, right?
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. I have a really important question about this collection.
Yeah.
How is the bowling?
I haven't tried it. I'm sorry. I haven't tried any of the like sports ones yet because there's so much interesting shit in here that I've never heard of. What the fuck was 9-Man Morris? Like,
well, what was it?
It's an ancient Roman game where there's basically 3 squares that are kind of connected by lines, and then what's the word for this when you have a shape within another shape and it kind of like expands outwards? Yes, 3 concentric squares. And so each corner of those squares is a place where you can put a marble.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also on the midpoints between the top, bottom, left, and right corners, there's another like little path drawn between each of the squares. And so you place marbles, and the point is to place 3 in a row, and that lets you take away one of your enemy's marbles. But then once they're placed, you can only move them where there's a line connecting.
Right. You can't move them. You can't jump them from point D to point A.
Right.
You have to go from yeah.
So part of it is getting a setup where you've blocked out your enemy, but you can like kind of move one piece back and forth into a row of 3 for each time that you get it back into a row of 3 is a new time you can take a marble away. But that's harder to set up than you think, because at first you can just place the marbles anywhere until you've got all your marbles on the board. You're just kind of placing them wherever.
Right.
And then once they're all set, you have to figure out how to kind of move them around the board. It's really fun. And also, once you're down to your last 3, if you're down to your last 3, you can move them wherever you want, which is very interesting. Kind of like last ditch effort. Here's a way you can get back. And I've won games from
cool.
there too, which is fun. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. There's so many like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on here.
51.
Oh, what's 51? And also, if that feels like it's overwhelming, they have this fun little system where there's a globe that has little figurines on them that have different kind of like categories of games. So I'm looking at one now that's like social games, which are like card games mostly. And here's one that's like the Nintendo's history. It's like games that Nintendo, before they were a video game company, used to put out. So they've got Hanafuda in there. They've got Shogi. They've got Ricci. Then there's like one that's all the card games. And here's one that's like traveling around the world, different. And it's like a group of 5 different games from different places around the world. Mm-hmm. You know, there's just like a lot of easy, like if you're not even sure what to choose, you can just pick one of these people. And then there's also, now that the game is online, when you start, you actually make a little avatar and you pick your favorite food and your heart's desire.
Okay.
And you can then see there's a list there, 20 other people around the world that also have my same heart's desire. And when you click on one of these avatars, it has it says their favorite food, their heart's desire, their latest best record in a game, and then recommended games. So,
and then you swipe left or right, or is that where it ends?
No, that's it.
Yeah,
Basically,
sometimes you're chilling out, listening to your friend describe a thing that sounds pretty cool, and then you're like, wait, is this a cursed object?
Wait a second. Yeah.
Tell this game your name. No, your true name. Your heart's desire.
But yeah, you can just like, it's just like if you want to pick a random game but not sure how, here's other people that also like pizza. This is what they play.
Bro,
You know?
everyone likes pizza.
Heart's desire?
There's a lot
pizza?
here, tacos. I
Or the
picked
turtle,
tacos.
like the community's just the turtles?
Yeah.
I picked video games as my heart's desire because obviously.
Why are you playing this board game collection? What are you doing?
It's a video game. That's a video game.
Okay.
Board games are video games.
Board games are video games.
Games are games.
That's what the science says.
Yeah, that's math.
Cool. No,
neat.
this seems like a very good thing to have right now. Like this definitely feels like a good collection of cool games. So
yeah, I'm gonna try to set up a small thing with some family members of like streaming to them through something to do like a local game night. Yeah, you can do same like one system game for like turn-based stuff really easily, so I could just like, okay, where do you want to move?
Oh, where do you want to go? Right,
yeah.
right.
And without them having to have a Switch, so that's another reason I was interested in it. I haven't actually tried that yet, but I think it'll work out pretty well. These are it's something that I feel like seems what's the word I'm looking. It's a thing that you like kind of take for granted, but they're the AI, the UI in this game and like the inputs are all very simple and very easy to read, which can sometimes be a fault of games where when it's not considered. Like you notice it more when it's bad than when it's good, but this one has really good. So it doesn't have in-game voice chat, presumably? No.
Does it
online,
connect to the app? Did they do the app voice chat?
I'm not sure. I think you can, but like Nintendo Online has always been crap. So I have no clue if there's any I haven't even thought of that. Like I basically at this point forget that it's even an option in most games and use Discord. But
I mostly was thinking like, I mean, that is also what I would do, right? But like if my Switch was, the thing about my Switch is nice is you can just bring it wherever. But it is easy to think of like, oh, I want to like kick back and play Uno with my friends. Do I also want to have a computer near me so I can be on Discord? I guess I have my phone. I could call them and do a call on my phone, I guess. But
Oh, the other nice thing for local play is that if you're with someone who does have a Switch and you want to play a 2-Switch game, they can do the old like they used to do with certain games on the Game Boy Advance, I think, where you can like download part of it and like it'll play without you having to purchase the game, which is really nice.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. All right. Does anyone have anything else they want to dig into or shout out? Rob, I know that you put some time into an older game, but I'm curious if you have any quick thoughts on the other one you wanted to bring to the table.
Oh, yeah. So I started playing the second season of the Telltale Batman series, which is on Game Pass right now, I want to say. And I'd played the first season and enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought it did some interesting things as a spin on the familiar Batman origin story. And this continues like the arc of this being a really interesting take on the character and the world. It continues to feel like the Telltale series was a really good, like limited run set of issues for Batman, like in an alternate universe,
Nice.
where like a lot of the things that are just kind of taken for granted are much more up for debate. Chief of which is, were the Waynes good people, right? Like is this entire crusade on crime based on the faulty recollections of a traumatized child and a misunderstanding of his past? And that's kind of what the Telltale series uses as its point of departure. And then the second season kind of continues that as being very much a game that really... Okay, a lot of Batman renditions do this thing. I think the Nolan one was the most pointed about this, which is that Bruce Wayne is the mask, right? He's really Batman, like which is the true persona. What I like about the Telltale series is basically its entire structure is that, well, this guy really is genuinely trying to be both, right? There are things like he is trying to balance these two sides of himself and trying to use both to the same ends, right? He is trying to make Bruce Wayne a tool he can use selectively to advance his ends. He can also pivot to the Batman persona and use that to achieve what he wants, in his battles with a growing roster of supervillains are showing up in the second season. What I like about the second season is that it really does start pulling at the tension between the two. And it does the thing that I think Telltale games were at their best, which was making you feel like not necessarily you were making the wrong choices, but that they were going to be definitive choices, right? That there were things that you couldn't really successfully navigate a middle path. And even though you might want to push in a different direction, circumstances were just going to force you to do something you really didn't want to do. And I think the second season does this even more effectively as it kind of recasts the arrival of the Joker, not as like the dawn of this crazed supervillain who's inspired by Batman to sort of become his nemesis, but as genuinely somebody who thinks he's friends with Bruce Wayne. Somebody who really is trying to work through his various issues and has fallen in with a group of supervillains. And I think it's kind of funny seeing a Batman game that unfolds a bit like a tragedy in a way that I really like.
I'm mad at myself for having never gotten to those because they seemed extremely like the version of Batman that I connect to really well. So, one day. Yeah,
they've got good animated series vibes in a lot of ways.
Cool. I guess really quick thing for me, shout out, is I have started playing some Xenoblade Chronicles. I'd previously only played Chronicles X and Chronicles 2. I really like Chronicles X and then and 2. Once I got over some of the let's say questionable character design, I think like the bones of that game were really, really good. It also has some really good character design mixed in. And so this is the first time I'm going back to playing the original Chronicles, which those are 3 games in a series that are like, we would need a lore reasons to unpack the Xeno series that includes Xenogears and Xenosaga, but Xenoblade now, they're like connected, but not exactly one-to-one is my understanding, or not exactly like, it's not like a linear series that it's very weird. Anyway, what does make it a series is lots of similar mechanical things, and it's interesting to go back to Xenoblade Chronicles, the whatever definitive edition, redefine whatever it's called, because of having spent so much time in these later games, which definitely I think added some layers to make the moment-to-moment stuff a little bit more exciting in terms of gameplay. I think if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard, or if you've listened to past podcasts that like Patrick has been on, he's talked about the game having MMO-style combat. But that doesn't really... There's a lot of types of MMO-style combat. I swear I'm not dragging Patrick here. I get what he means. because it is a game in which you have an auto attack and then abilities on cooldown. But there are ways in which there are different sort of, you can almost think about sliders of complexity in different places, right? And so for something like Final Fantasy XIV, the complexity on building your character is nil, right? Like, you're trying to build the best version of your character. That character will look like every other character in terms of abilities and equipment at the top level. There's no, like, I'm going down this skill tree or I want to specialize here. There's some stuff with materia that you can equip for bonuses, but like basically everyone knows what the best basic build is. And the expertise comes in executing on it, doing your combos, hitting your rotation, etc. Other MMOs focus on maybe less intense, moment-to-moment combat, but do give you a lot of room to define your character and pick a build. And this definitely feels more like that, in the sense of like, I'm trying to make sure that like I have the right tools for the job. I've spent time, leveling up the character down certain skill trees. Okay, I'm making this person my tank. I'm making this person my damage dealer. Do I want to emphasize this person physical damage or magic damage? And that gives me a lot of joy, even if the moment-to-moment combat is just not that interesting. I also think that Monolith does such a great job of creating big open environments that feel, through the scale, really, there's a real good sensation of scale. Unlike Xenoblade Chronicles X, there will never be a point in this game that I get to be in a big robot.
No.
I get to fly a mech around, unfortunately.
Damn.
But the basic premise of this game's world is still like incredible. The world as it is the body of two gods stuck, frozen in combat from many eons before. And so you're like, yeah, I'm on this god's thigh right now, and it's just like a big vast plain, right?
Wow.
Like, I'm in the shoulder blades, like there's mountains up here or whatever. I haven't gotten to the shoulder blades yet, but you get what I'm saying. And that's like and that means like wherever you are, you can like kind of look around, like, oh yeah, there's the other god with a big sword stabbed into this god that I'm standing on right now. Cool. And that is just like, there's so many beautiful vistas. There's so many really, really striking places. And that is hard to complain about. It's nice to be in a very pretty virtual place right now, even if I think so far the game's like story and characters haven't really connected with me. But I'm very early on still. I'm still in the first chapter. And so hopefully I'll play some more over the weekend and report back on Monday.
This is for the Switch, right?
This is the Switch, yeah. It's a Nintendo published game. It's Monolith Soft, who I recently found out, believe it or not, did some work on Breath of the Wild, which makes perfect sense. I think specifically it was some like of the overworld like map design stuff, and it's like, yeah, that's what they do super well. Like, they're so good at evoking places, they're so good at communicating distance and scale, and Breath of the Wild does that so well. I'm like, okay, yeah, now I can totally see how they could have helped with that. Cool. All right, I think that should probably do it for us today. Maybe on Monday we'll get to the question bucket. For now, if you have questions, you can send them to gaming@vice.com with the subject question. But for now, let's wrap up. Thank you as always to Bowen for letting us use the track Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Find out more about that at waypoint.zone/BOEN. Follow me on Twitter at Austin_Walker. And follow everything Waypoint does, twitter.com/Waypoint, waypoint.vice.com. As always, shout outs to our incredible compatriots at Vice and at Motherboard. Some really great stories have gone up over the last couple of weeks. About what's going on right now, about what to do if you're looking to do something right now, how you can support, the communities and protests, and how to do it safely. So definitely check out Vice. Where can people find you, Cado?
At A_Cado_appears.
How about you, Rob?
At Rob Zachney.
All right. We will be back on Monday with more. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home. Peace. Actually, maybe not go home right now. Right now, go help, go support people. Like, go stand shoulder to shoulder if you can do it. Now is the fucking time. So, okay. Until Monday. Peace. All right.
Okay. Podcast.
Mm-hmm. That was me turning the air conditioner back on.
Like,
Yeah, I
what's those
definitely left
beats?
myself on mute a little bit longer than I needed to try to bring the temperature back down.
It's warm. I gotta go open the window.
It's distressing how quickly the cold just is lost when you
Gone.
It's just
stop
gone.
running the air.
Yeah.
It's just
it
like, oh
sucks.
no. And now somehow the heat is worse than ever.
And now,
it's just
yeah.
like swampy and miserable.
I'm sure there's a reason for that, but I don't know it.
Science, I'm sure.
All right.
I'm glad you
Take
have an
care,
AC.
y'all.
Also.
Have a good
Bye,
weekend,
Rob.
y'all. Bye,
Bye, y'all. How's Mina?
Oh, she's incredible. Let me send you a picture I took this morning. That was just too much to be born. The wrong photo. I was trying to get a bunch of photos from when she just like face planted in the pillows.
Oh my
here we
God.
go. I think that should be it.
Oh! It's very cute. So
And then
sleepy.
a little while later, right before I took her to daycare,
How can you sleep like that? She's like in that crevice between those two pillows. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
that is her favorite spot.
Wow.
Like she was being so sleepy and quiet. I was like, I bet like if she was like this, I could podcast with her. But of
Right.
course, dog sleeping now means dog will extremely not sleep in 20 minutes.
Yeah. Dog wake up with full energy.
Yeah. So took her to school. Boy, people sure are done with fucking masks.
Jesus Christ, really?
If you like, there are a lot of people who think that having the mask looped around your ears but dangling below your mouth is like wearing a mask.
What the
And,
fuck?
dude, like that was fully half the people with masks I saw were wearing them that way, and then tons of people just not wearing them anymore.
Jesus Christ, I can't.
so-
I don't. There's still a fucking.
Are
Still
people
a
being more
pandemic.
compliant in New York? Because like we didn't get hit as hard here in Lowell, so maybe people just don't take it as seriously.
My only frame of reference for the past like couple of weeks was the one time I went out last night to a protest, and everyone was wearing a fucking mask in the middle of a fucking protest. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that if I were to actually walk around and see people, there would just be people. Like I did see like one or two the other day when I took a short walk that had their masks like around their chins, but they were like eating and like distanced from everyone. So I could see that like you like take a bite, put it back on when you're actually walking through people. That seems fine to me. But the like just walking around with it like around your neck anyways, like not doing anything with your mouth and like being next to people is fucked up.
Yeah. And it's tough to tell, like, are people just dumbasses or is this like an expression of contrarianism, you know? Like, do these people want to get yelled at and like get in a fight with a liberal? I have no idea.
Yeah. There's also like definitely a lot of misinformation of just like how close is safe and like when do you need it? Just like and it's hard to tell whether or not, they're like got bad information and are like, oh, I'll pull it up when I go inside somewhere.
Well,
but outside it's
no
fine
joggers.
Because, oh yeah,
and every jogger in my town thinks they shouldn't have to wear one. Like when we go walking on the trail, like they all just go by huffing and puffing, which is the most spreadable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it literally is. Like the more you are respirating, the more you're putting out. And yeah, you'll be on the trail, and like jogger after jogger will be like blowing past you, just wheezing in your face.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a few joggers, but not many. They've been mostly wearing masks here, at least in my neighborhood. All the cyclists though are wearing masks. I haven't seen a cyclist without a mask.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
Yeah,
cyclists way better citizens than joggers.
Turns out. Oh fuck.
Though I will say, I guess now that I think about that, most of the joggers I see are white folks, and a lot of people I still see out biking are like Black and Latino.
Right. Right, because it's just
So
like
that-
the way
that is-
an easy way to get around.
Yep.
When everything's
Yep.
fucking
Whereas the
shut down.
recreational bikers, like I don't see a lot of dudes rolling around in their $3,000
the people with the
bikes.
kits, aren't
Yeah.
out anymore. Maybe.
Yeah, they fled the cities or something. And also just very funny moment outside the dog care place. The sun was falling in this weird way, so I got like a really good reflection of the other side of the street. Lol cop strolling up the street, black guy coming the other direction. Lol cop makes a point of being like, "Oh hey, good morning. How are you? Beautiful day, isn't it?" And just very like awkwardly best behavior. Which is better than the alternative, right?
Sure.
It went fully over into the overcorrecting white person
Right.
thing. And guy was friendly enough, but it was very funny because the thing I would say about cops around here is generally they just don't interact with you at all.
Right.
Though this guy's older, he might be of that generation of cops that was not taught where it's all like dominate every interaction. You could be stabbed at any moment. Like this guy was more of a central casting beat cop as opposed to the young jackboots
Right.
that comprise a lot of younger officers.
Well, at least one good interaction has happened in the world.
Ish.
Yeah, one good-ish.
No racism here, says friendly lol police officer to first black man he sees.
Oh,
I will say the city manager's office, we've had a bunch of protests here. I guess demonstrations is probably the more apt term for it, because they haven't been met with force. And the city manager put out a statement basically endorsing everything the demonstrators want. I haven't looked too much into it. My suspicion is if you go back about 10 years, it looks like there were a lot of use of force complaints against the Lowell PD. And they've really dropped off. So I do wonder if there was kind of a... Yeah, I do wonder if this is kind of one of the areas this town kind of cleaned up its act.
yeah. Did you see that? Who was it? I'm trying to remember which police department was like, look, we're taking some money out of their budget. And it's something like 5% of their budget.
Yeah.
But their budget is so big that the number seems big.
Yeah, the fact that NYPD costs $6 billion a year was news to me.
It's a big city.
That's a lot of money.
And that's too much money. Yeah. It fucking sucks.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Yes, I hear a slight
Also, you're
hiss,
very
yes.
loud.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
I need to record.
Yes.
1 second. Let me start this
Can
recording.
I hear that?
1 second. Let me get my backup going.
Wait, is that what I think it is?
Is that what you think it is,
Is that
Cado?
what
Can
did you
hear
do
that?
it? Did
What
you
does that
fucking do
sound?
it?
Is that the
my
AC?
God.
That is the air conditioning unit in my apartment and my bedroom.
Amazing.
Too damn hot. It's too damn hot.
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn it
absolutely.
off while we
I'm
do
proud
this.
of you getting out of it. It's not even that hot yet, but you did
I
not
have
wait
to.
for the
I
100.
cannot wait for it.
Yeah.
We got a one day a few days ago that was too bad. I was like, no,
Mm-hmm.
not again, not again. And here's the other thing is my fan broke, right? And then my backup fan broke. It wouldn't. My main fan broke. It wasn't going to work again. So I got like a little fan. They're like, oh, this will carry me through until I get my air conditioner in. And then that was like a little black one. It was like an off-brand. So I love the Vornado. This was like an off-brand Vornado, and it stopped being able to tilt. Like it could either be directly up at the ceiling, or that was kind of it. It could only be directly up at the ceiling, so I had to put it on its side if I wanted it to go like at an angle through the room. I was like, no, I'm done with this. This is happening.
The universe was like,
Had to
guess
look
what? We're gonna break everything.
I thought you said Vornado, like it was a Vornado. I didn't realize that type of fan has that name, Vornado.
Yeah,
I thought
it's
you
a
were
brand.
like Vor, like oh
Right.
shit, it's a Vornado.
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds gross as hell. Like why? Why do you like that? Why is that helpful?
Don't judge. Listen, some people are out here with needs.
For personal cooling though, I don't know.
My personal cooling needs. No, I have like the it's like that little black fan that like you see it now. If you've done a search for
now
one,
I've got it up on the shopping
like, oh
results.
yeah, that thing.
Oh yeah, one of those.
Bigger than
very
desk
effective.
fan, tinier than a box fan.
That's exactly right. And it's very good at circulating air through a room. It's why I haven't needed.
That's the key.
That's it.
You gotta,
That's the key.
Air got to keep moving. Like,
Air got to keep
that's
moving.
The thing.
That's
Air
what. That's the
moving.
thing. Air moving. 1 second. Let me grab this. Okay. All right. Those are good Mina pictures, also, Rob.
Yeah, their choice. She's great.
Is she doing good? She's better.
Yeah, she's all better. Right back to just being just unbelievable.
Should we time.is?
Yes.
This is 3. Was last week? Was Monday's Waypoints?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna do 18 seconds.
Yes.
It was a little fast. I'm sorry. It was faster
It's
than
all
I
right.
normally
We
do.
got it. We hit it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.